Hello everyone, I hope you're all doing well. Today I want to welcome you to the first chapter of What If Naruto Was a Forgotten Prodigy, Hated by His Family. If you'd like a second chapter, let me know in the comments. Enjoy.
3 years later, at the end of the Land of Fire, several Konoha ninja teams could be seen. The leader of the group, and also the most prominent member, was a scarecrow, for lack of a better term. He was a silver-haired man wearing the typical Jonin vest, his headband covering his left eye, and a mask covering his mouth. He was reading a book while laughing pervertedly, much to the annoyance of the women present. This was Kakashi Hitaki. His genin consisted of a blonde man with spiky hair, blue eyes, a headband, and an orange jumpsuit. This was Menma Namikaze, the heir to the Namikaze clan. There was a black-haired man with a ridiculous but sexy duck-like hairstyle, black eyes, a headband, and a perpetual frown. This was Sasuke Uchiha, heir to the Uchiha clan. The last one had long pink hair, green eyes, and her headband tied like a ribbon. This was Sakura Haruno, a civilian girl. The four of them were Team 7. The second team also consisted of 3 men and 1 girl. The Jounin had spiky black hair, black eyes, and a cigarette in his mouth. He was Asuma Sarutobi, the son of the 3rd Hokage. The first genin had black hair styled like a pineapple, wore chainmail armor under his clothes, and had his headband on his right arm. He was Shikamaru Nara, heir to the Nara clan. The second genin was a boy with short brown hair and a headband on his forehead. He was Choji Akimichi, heir to the Akimichi clan. The girl was blonde with long hair and bangs covering one eye. She wore a purple outfit and had green eyes. She was Ino Yamanaka, heir to the Yamanaka clan. They were Team 10. The third team consisted of 2 girls and 2 boys. The Jounin was a beautiful black-haired woman with red eyes, wearing a suit that appeared to be made entirely of bandages, her headband on her forehead. She was Kurenai Yuhi. The first boy had brown hair with strange red markings on his cheeks, wore a gray coat, and had a wild expression on his face. He had a small white dog perched on his head. He was Kiba Inuzuka, heir to the Inuzuka clan. The second boy had spiky black hair, wore a trench coat that reached his mouth, and had black sunglasses. He was Shino Aburame, heir to the Aburame clan. The girl had medium-length hair and pupilless white eyes. She wore a headband around her neck. She was Hinata Hyuga, former heir to the Hyuga clan. They were Team 8. The fourth team consisted of 3 women and 2 men. The Jounin was a white-haired woman with long hair tied in a ponytail, purple eyes, and a sword slung across her back. She was Kushina Namikaze, formerly of the Uzumaki clan. The first woman was blonde with 2 long pigtails, blue eyes, and a headband. She also carried a sword slung across her back. She was Shio Namikaze, the first daughter of the 4th Hokage. The second woman was dark-haired with long, straight hair, a headband, and a sword slung across her back. She was Yakumo Kurama, heir to the Kurama clan. The first man had fair skin, was shirtless, and carried a brush and scrolls on his back. He was Sai, a former root recruit. The last man was gray-haired with short hair, wearing a long kimono with long sleeves. He was Zora, also a former root recruit. Together, they formed Team 11. The fifth team consisted of 3 women and 1 boy. The Jounin was a purple-haired woman with a crossed-out tattoo on her arm and a thin sword on her back. She was Yuga Ozuki, a former ANBU member and now a Jounin by request. The first woman had long blonde hair, which she wore as a headband. She was Mito Namikaze, the second daughter of the 4th Hokage. The boy was blonde, similar to Menma, but his hair was longer. Otherwise, he was the same. He was Nagato Namikaze, the 3rd son of the 4th Hokage. The last woman had black hair tied in a long ponytail and gray eyes. She was Kasumi Uchiha, Mikoto's first daughter. Together, they were Team 12. The last team was an all-female squad. The Jounin was Mikoto Uchiha, and her genin were her 3 daughters, along with Kasumi, Sayuri, Satsuki, and Hitomi. Together they formed Team 13. Anyone would think that being ninjas they would behave in a disciplined manner. Yeah, right. Sasuke tried his best to ignore Sakura, who kept asking him out, while Sakura was also ignoring Menma, who was also asking her out. Shio and Nagato, standing behind them, were telling Menma to stop acting like an idiot. Meanwhile, Ino was flirting with a blushing Sai, who didn't know what to do, while receiving cues from Kiba, Choji, Zora, Mito, and Shikamaru. Behind them, the Uchiha clan could be seen with Yakumo, who was sighing at the absurdity of the situation while talking to Shino. The Jonin watched the scene, sweating profusely, until the white-haired woman had had enough. "Kushina, do they want to shut up once and for all?" she screamed as her hair transformed into 9 tails. It was odd, considering she was no longer the 9 tails Jinchuriki. All the genin reacted in fear, even the most serious ones like Sai and Shino. "Everyone, hi Kushina-sama. Asuma, you can't blame them, Kushina-sama. It's the first time they've left the village, at least most of them," referring to Kushina's children. The white-haired woman was about to reply, "Kurinai, after all, we decided to reach the meeting point with the caravan on foot. Let them enjoy." 4 months had passed since the teenagers became genin, and the Jonin tried their best to train them. Asuma, knowing his genin were the successors of the legendary trio, attempted to train them, but their attitudes proved a major setback. Kurinai, knowing her team was a tracking unit, tried to train them, but found it impossible because her genin relied heavily on their clan techniques, which she couldn't learn. Mikoto and Yugao had no trouble training their students, so they had no problems. Kushina, knowing her team was an infiltration unit, trained them in stealth, but she didn't find it sufficient and decided to train them in kenjutsu. However, Shio, Yakumo, and Zora were the only ones who requested elemental training. Sai was content with his ink jutsu. Kakashi had several problems training his team because the genin refused to work together. Although Menma and Sasuke were friends when they were younger, their relationship broke down due to Sasuke's negative opinion of the Hokage for abandoning Naruto. Menma didn't take it well, and they had a huge fight. From that moment on, Sasuke became more isolated, even from his family. Menma was a complete idiot. He graduated last in the academy, and his chakra control was terrible. He could barely use his father's Rasengan technique with the help of a clone. Sakura was a hopeless, Sasuke-obsessed fangirl. And Sasuke was an emo who didn't care about his classmates. He sighed, knowing the Hokage had undoubtedly left him with a very difficult team. For many years, Kakashi was a broken man, his teammates' deaths had left him deeply saddened, and things only worsened when he and the entire village believed the Hokage had died. But when he saw Naruto with the Uzumaki surname and red hair, he went to confront the Hokage, believing Naruto to be Minato and Kushina's son. At first, the third Hokage denied it, but Kakashi investigated, and Sarutobi had no choice but to tell him the truth. From that day on, Kakashi swore to protect the redhead, but he couldn't. As an ANBU, he was too busy, and Naruto suffered constant abuse until he left. After that, the silver-haired man seriously considered suicide, but he managed to overcome his grief thanks to his friend Guy. If he couldn't protect him, at least he could ensure his happiness. But when Minato and Kushina returned, fury flooded his body. His master had abandoned his son to his fate. The two tried to explain themselves, but it was too late. He had already crossed the line, and whenever he was near the two of them, he couldn't control his temper or he would start reading his books. Kakashi sighed again. "Kakashi, I wonder what would have happened if you had stayed, Naruto." While the genin were having their own conversation, "Sakura, Sasuke-kun, why don't we go on a date after this mission?" Sasuke, snorting and ignoring her. "Menma, Sakura, if you and I could." "Sakura, shut up, Menma, you idiot," he said, hitting him. "Shio, Menma, don't you get tired of getting hit by that half-woman?" "Sakura, who are you calling a half-woman with a scarred face?" "Shio, jealous, people say they make me look prettier, which can't be said about you, flat-chested one." Sakura felt like hitting the blonde but held back knowing that Shio would defend herself. "Shikamaru, just relax, we just have to escort a caravan from the land of waves to Konoha." "Assume, that's not entirely true, we have another mission." "Choji, what does Asuma-sensei mean?" Sarutobi was about to reply but was interrupted. "Kiba, holy shit." They all turned around on guard, but what they saw left them speechless. A bridge, an enormous bridge that seemed to have no end, made of stone, bigger than any construction they had ever seen before. Kakashi, I had heard about this but I didn't think it would be this long. Menma, incredible. The group continued across the bridge to the entrance to wait for their clients. Nagato, that's right, Asuma-sensei didn't say we had another mission. Asuma, oh, you see, 6 months ago the bridge was destroyed, and the daimyo of the Land of Fire considered forming an alliance with the Land of Waves. The daimyo of the Waves agreed, but when we considered the same idea, they refused and said they wanted nothing to do with us. Because, Yugao, that's what we need to know. We need to talk to the caravan in case they know anything, or use a transformation jutsu to enter the village. Shino, I don't think it's necessary. Everyone looked at him, confused. Hinata, why do you say that? Shino pointed to the entrance, or rather, to the place where the name was. Everyone looked, but the name of the bridge left them frozen. The Great Naruto Bridge in honor of the person who gave us back hope. Everyone looked at the Namikazes. Menma, this has to be a joke. Shio, you're an idiot. Menma, how many people do you think have the same name as Narani? They would have continued arguing if Kushina hadn't run off towards the village. The Uchiha women were about to do the same, but they stopped themselves. Asuma, Kushina-sama, he said, running towards her. The white-haired woman ran with all her might. Months, years, she had waited for any information about her eldest son. She wanted to know what connection Naruto had with the Land of Waves. Unfortunately, Asuma was faster. And he managed to tackle her before she could enter. Kushina, let me go. The rest arrived at the scene. Nagato, Ka-chan, please calm down. Kushina, don't tell me to calm down. I've spent 4 years searching for information about your brother, and now that I'm close enough, I'm not going to. Plan. That surprised everyone. Kakashi had slapped Kushina. Kakashi, relax, if you enter the village you could cause a national incident. The white-haired woman fell to her knees in tears as her children rushed to comfort her. The others decided to leave them alone for a moment. Yakumo, I hope Sensei is well. Sai and Zora nodded. Sai, what I wonder is what Shio's brother did to have his name on a bridge. Sayuri, it must have been something amazing. The other female Uchihas agreed, although they also blushed slightly. The sound of moving cars interrupted them. Everyone composed themselves, waiting for their customers. The man was on a horse-drawn carriage. Client, hello, it seems you are the ones who will escort me to Konoha. Asuma, that's right, we will escort you. The customer whipped the horse and it began to move. Client, and by the way, could you tell me what the hell you did to the inhabitants of the wave when I told them I hired a Konoha escort? They almost beheaded me for it. Kurinai, you're not from here, are you? Customer, no. I'm from the land of vegetables, so I'm not aware of what happened. Although from what I know, Konoha did a great insult to the hero of the wave, a certain Naruto Uzumaki. That eased everyone's doubts. Kakashi, yes, Konoha did some questionable things. Although I'm surprised they put their name on a bridge. Client, if you only knew the truth after what he did, I'm not surprised. Nagato, what did he do? Client, you see, 3 years ago, the village was under the control of Gato, the tycoon. Well, the tycoon hired a huge number of bandits who harassed and robbed the villagers. He also levied very high taxes and imprisoned the daimyo in dungeons. Everyone was shocked by what life was like in the country 3 years ago. But they couldn't defend themselves either, since he also hired ninjas to protect him. Kakashi, you know their names. Client, Aoi Rokuso, who came with a group of genin. Kakashi, Rokuso. Sakura, who is Kakashi-sensei? Kakashi, he is a former Chunin of Konoha. The bastard tricked one of his companions and stole the Raijin no Ken, a jewel of the Senju clan. Everyone was surprised. Myth, that there were more ninjas. Client, Cat hired the Demon Brothers, a strange ex-NBU from Kiri and their leader Zabusa Momochi. Shio, Ka-chan, who is he? Kushina did not answer, she was very worried that her son would face Zabusa. Kakashi, Zabusa Momochi, former member of the 7 Swordsmen of the Mist. Everyone was surprised, they knew that group from the academy. Mikoto, are you telling us that Naruto faced all of them? The customer nodded, leaving everyone in shock. Client, although he didn't come alone, he came with his own group. Mikoto, his friends. Customer, there was more or less an albino and a fairly large guy who was called by the name Sama. Sasuke, so they were his followers. The only male Uchiha was very interested in the redhead mystery. Customer. Afterwards there was a white-haired man with sharp teeth, a purple-haired woman, a green-haired woman, and there were two redheads who, according to the villagers, they thought were their little sisters. Myth/Shio, what? They shouted in outrage. There were two vixens out there who wanted to replace them. They weren't going to allow it. Client. Well, apparently he had the same hair color and the same last name. Everyone was surprised again. There were more Uzumaki. Kakashi, I see, but what happened? Client. Apparently, they were going to execute a fisherman, but the redheads group stopped the execution and also killed Aoi along with the demon brothers and the genin. It seems Naruto took Aoi's sword and carried it off with him. The villagers didn't see much because spikes erupted from the ground, killing the bandits, so the villagers escaped. When they returned, Gato and Zabuza had also escaped. Everyone was shocked that a group of children had killed a jounin all by themselves. Kushina was horrified, thinking that her son had to kill at such a young age. Client. Anyway, later Naruto made a plan to defeat Gato. All the jounin were incredulous. A 12-year-old boy made a plan to overthrow a tyrant. Client. In short, they sent the orange-haired one and the green-haired one to the dungeons to rescue the daimyo, while the albino and one of the redheads went to assassinate the bandit camps, and the white-haired one, the purple-haired one, Naruto himself, and his other red-haired sister stayed to protect the village. Mito and Shio were about to scream about that last part, but Sai and Yakumo covered their mouths. Customer. What I don't believe is that the redhead went to all the villages in the country and killed the bandits. Everyone didn't understand why she said it didn't make sense, except for Kushina, who looked horrified. Shino. What's so strange about that? Client. That all the villages were attacked at the same time. And apparently he created 100 copies of himself that he sent to kill the bandits. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Naruto created 100 clones, something that Menma and Nagato could only do with all their chakra. Client. Anyway, after that, Naruto and the albino faced Zabuza and his partner. The albino fought the Anbu while Naruto fought Zabuza, and they won. After that, I don't know what happened to those two. Everyone stared in disbelief, some lost in their own thoughts. Sasuke, who thought Naruto was incredibly strong, reluctantly accepted that he couldn't defeat him. He wanted to find him and ask where his power came from. The four younger Uchiha sisters blushed like tomatoes, thinking about the redhead and having perverted thoughts about the Uzumaki. Mikoto and Kushina, still surprised, puffed out their chests with pride. The Namikaze brothers were equally speechless, though Menma smiled, thinking about how strong his older brother, whom he'd never met, was, even though he felt a pang of jealousy. Mikoto, and afterwards, I asked, thinking she would know where the one she considers her son was. Client. I don't really know what happened, but apparently the villagers killed the bandits, and then Naruto and his group helped with the reconstruction of the village and left. I have no idea where they went. Kushina. Don't you know where they went? Client. I don't know, although some say the daimyo knows. Kushina felt devastated. She finally had a trace of her son, but the trail went cold. Shio. Don't worry, Ka-chan, we'll ask Ero-sennin to investigate it. Client. If your friend is going to enter the village, he should be careful. The village is full of samurai. All samurai. Client. 2 years ago, the village formed an alliance with Mifune, so several samurai protect the village and several villagers are trained as samurai. The people of Konoha were worried. It was going to be difficult to infiltrate. Preparing for the march, Lemon. In the land of fire, a large group of 11 people could be seen. The oldest had dark skin and disheveled hair, with the expression of someone who had just woken up. He carried a large sword on his back. Apparently, he and the other 10 were Kumo ninja. The other 10 appeared to be teenagers. Among them were a redhead, a purple-haired girl, 2 white-haired girls, a blonde with a long ponytail, a green-haired girl, an orange-haired boy, a black-haired girl, and 2 redheads. They were 10 genin and 1 jounin. One of the jounin was sighing repeatedly, and the orange-haired boy turned away. Yugo, Darui-sensei is doing well. Darui, I'm fine, it's just that when I get back there will be so much paperwork to do that I'm getting depressed, it's going to be so boring. One of the white-haired men joined the conversation. Kimimaro, it couldn't be helped, we didn't know that our B-rank mission would turn into an S-rank one. Redhead, that's debatable, it's the 5th or 6th time it's happened. Kimimaro, the 7th Naruto-sama. Guren, to be honest, with our mission history, it's to be expected that they will rank up. Karen, there's nothing wrong with it, after all we got a trade agreement and another alliance. Suigetsu, although I think it would have been better if you had accepted Koyuki-sama's offer. Guren, Haku, Yujito, and Taiyuya frowned for a similar reason. They didn't want that vixen, as they called her, to marry her secret love, Guren's side, her lover, Yujito's side, and her cousin or older brother, Taiyuya's side. Naruto, I'm going to pass. Koyuki was a beauty, but I couldn't have a relationship with her being an active ninja, and she's a daimyo. Then he took a gourd he had in his pocket and took a long drink. Naruto, wow, I love sake, she said happily. Several hours later, at the Reikage Tower, the same group could be seen in the Reikage's office alongside another team consisting of Killer Bee as a Jounin and the Genin Omoi, Karui, and Samui. They were watching the Reikage, who was signing his signature with a bored expression. A little while ago, Darui told him about their S-rank mission. Apparently, they had traveled to the land of snow and had to protect the actress Koyuki Kasiana, the rightful heir to the throne. They had to protect her from her uncle, Doto. They not only completed the mission but also activated a heat generator that brought spring to the country, killed Doto, and placed Koyuki on the throne. Well, great work. I'll send the money for an S-rank mission to your accounts. But I have to talk to you about something important. The Chunin exams are coming up, but the location where they'll be held matters. Everyone was surprised by that. Karui, where the exams will be held. They're going to be in Konoha. Everyone looked at the redhead, knowing about his past. Naruto, okay. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. But the redhead vanished in a flash of red. Killer Bee, wow, he took it very well. Mabui, you're an idiot, B, he hasn't overcome his traumas yet. Konoha. Minato sat in his council seat shortly after the Genin teams told him what had happened. Afterward, he asked Kushina and Kakashi to come to the council chamber, though Namikaze didn't understand why his wife was so depressed, but decided to ask her after the meeting. After a few minutes, several people began entering the council chamber, including some Minato knew very well. Tsum Inuzuka and Tsunade Senju entered, but greeted Kushina, who didn't respond. Shikaku Nara, Chosa Akimichi, Inoichi Yamanaka, Hayashi Hyuga, and Shibi Aburame, the latter two being his former teammates, also entered. These were usually the people he got along with best on the council, but then some people entered with whom he didn't get along very well. One of them was the leader of the Kurama clan. The Kurama clan had endured difficult years because, for some reason, their Kekkei Henkai was weakening with each generation, but Yakumo possessed unparalleled talent, so the clan placed all their hopes on her. However, a demon-like entity named Hido possessed the girl, forcing Minato to make a difficult decision. He ordered a containment seal placed on the girl to prevent Hido from causing further problems. Because of this, the girl was forbidden from learning genjutsu, which the clan leader was furious about, but he had to accept it. But another group entered, the three elders. This group had only given him headaches, especially Danzo. When Minato discovered that Danzo's root operations were still active, even though Hiruzen had ordered them to be banned immediately, he dismantled the system and reprimanded Danzo, but they couldn't punish him because those operations had helped the village somewhat. However, Danzo had been placed under constant surveillance. And finally, he saw the last two people enter, and one of them was the one he got along with the worst. Hiruzen Sarutobi was followed by his student Jiraiya, who tried to talk to him, but the old man paid him no attention. Since his return, Hiruzen had made it clear that their relationship was strictly professional. Minato knew that the family had abandoned the village at its most crucial moment, but he hadn't thought things would be like this. But apparently, he didn't understand the reason for the old man's hatred, and that hatred was obviously because of what he had done to Naruto. Everyone was already seated and ready to start the meeting. Minato, well, as you know, I sent the Genin teams to find out why the Land of Waves doesn't want to form an alliance with Konoha, and it seems they found the reason. Kakashi looked at the woman beside him and, seeing that she would not answer, he spoke. Kakashi, well, you see, the reason they don't want to do business with us is because. Well, the Jounin shifted uncomfortably, scratching the back of his neck. Kakashi, well, just mentioning the name of the bridge will make you understand the reason. Everyone was surprised and confused by that. Civil, what does the name of the bridge have to do with it? Kakashi, its name is the Great Naruto Bridge. Everyone's eyes widened in shock. Even the Jounin started counting. 3, 2, 1. Poof! Minato and Jiraiya couldn't believe it. The elders spoke with analytical expressions. The clan leaders were incredulous, but were snapped out of their thoughts by the civilian council, who began shouting like madmen. Civil, how is that possible? Civilian, like Naruto Uzumaki. Civil, you're implying that we lost the possibility of a trade agreement because of the devil. But the civilian regretted saying the forbidden word when he received murderous glares from Mikoto, Hiroen, Kushina, and Minato. Minato, Kikuo-san, I warn you that if you speak about my son like that again, there will be consequences. The civilian who said that with tears in his eyes nodded, deciding not to speak for the rest of the meeting. In the following hours, Kakashi recounted everything Naruto had done in the Land of Waves. It's worth mentioning that when he described how Naruto and his group faced Gato and Zabuza, everyone was astonished. Especially when he said that Naruto had defeated Zabuza on equal terms. However, they decided that Jiraiya would travel to the Land of Waves to gather information from the daimyo's palace. Kumo village 1 week later. In the last 3 years, Kumo changed considerably. Naruto created a barrier over the village entrance, ensuring that when someone entered, the Reikage, the Anbu, and Naruto himself would be notified. The Uzumaki clan mansion was also built. Before that, Naruto killed all the spies from other villages, thanks to his sensory abilities. At that time, Naruto started a business selling seals and scrolls, which quickly became very successful. After that, he, along with his group, another genin named Yujito, and Haku, were assigned to a 10-person team with Darui as the jonin in charge. By then, he and his group were beloved throughout Kumo, with the civilians seeing Naruto as a great future Reikage. Naruto's room 9 a.m. Lemon. Naruto was sleeping on his back in his bed. From the first day they settled in, he'd been sleeping in the same bed as Akino since they arrived, so he'd gotten into the habit of sleeping naked for obvious reasons. Therefore, it was very easy for the two girls, one with black hair and the other with blonde, to slip under the covers and start working on the redhead's erection. The Uzumaki began to awaken to the soft touch of lips on his member. It had practically become a routine he wouldn't even dream of complaining about. He spent a few minutes doing nothing, enjoying the pleasurable sensation that gradually transformed into lust. He opened his eyes and looked ahead, seeing Haku beneath the sheets, completely naked, devouring his groin. The girl had grown splendidly in those 3 years. Her hair, styled in a bun at the back with 2 side bangs, had grown considerably, and her breasts had grown to a DD cup. The beautiful young woman, with that warm smile and those lovely brown eyes, was now consumed by lust, and her full lips were kissing the redhead's cock, sucking it from top to bottom without stopping. Naruto smiled and stroked the brunette's hairstyle. Naruto, you seem hungry, Haku. Yuki let go of the meat stick but continued massaging him. Haku, good morning, Naruto-kun. Naruto, good morning, where are Akino and Yujito? They're usually with us in the morning. I ask out of curiosity, because normally he would wake up with the 3 girls kissing his member. Haku, we're running late, he went to make breakfast and Yujito has now gone to train. Naruto, and of course someone had to take away the swelling. The girl smiled at him sensually and swallowed the boy's cock again, only this time harder and faster. The redhead simply enjoyed the brunette's caresses as he stroked her hair. But he wanted to add a little more excitement. Carefully, so as not to disturb Haku, he knelt on the bed and grabbed her ass, beginning to massage it. The brunette moaned, which stimulated the boy's cock. Naruto continued playing with the girl's buttocks, kneading the flesh and receiving moans from Haku. Soon he began to stretch further to insert his fingers into the girl's wet anus and vagina. He played with both holes, first lightly caressing the edges, and then quickly inserted his fingers inside. When he did, he felt Haku begin to suck harder, her head bobbing up and down like a piston, relentlessly. At one point, the redhead couldn't hold back any longer and began to move his hips, helping the girl swallow faster. His thrusts allowed Haku to take the redhead's cock all the way down to her pelvis, moaning with pleasure at the feeling of her mouth full and her backside being attended to by the boy she loved. Haku had already come twice when Naruto exploded with a guttural roar, thrusting his cock deep into Haku's throat and releasing his entire load directly into her stomach. The sensation and excitement caused Yuki to reach orgasm for the third time. They remained in the same position for a few minutes until Naruto fell back on his ass, breathing slightly heavily. Haku gasped for breath as she licked her lips, searching for any remaining traces of her lover's seed. When she finished, she spread her legs, her hands behind her head, her breasts on full display. Haku, Naruto-kun, make me your woman however you want. It was too much for the redhead. That tender expression along with the pleading eyes made his self-control go out the window, although it gave him an idea. Naruto summoned 3 chakra chains, one of which wrapped around Haku's arms, binding them together, while the other 2 coiled around her legs. After that, Haku was left hanging chained in the air, her arms raised and legs spread wide, her vagina dripping with anticipation. The redhead stood on the bed and moved forward until he was in front of Yuki, then thrust more than 20 centimeters into the girl's cunt. Haku felt an electric shock throughout her body, her back arched, her eyes unfocused, her tongue lolling out, and her mouth releasing a loud moan. When she recovered, she looked at her lover. Haku, Naruto-kun, give me more. The redhead smiled and grabbed the girl's hips before slowly moving, hitting the girl's uterus, causing her to let out a scream of pleasure. Haku was in heaven and hell, and despite all the pain she was feeling, she wanted it to be faster, harder. She couldn't move, her hands and arms were chained, her legs shackled and spread. She was at his mercy, but she loved it, even though she desperately wanted him to be rougher with her. The Uzumaki began to increase the pace. Moans echoed throughout the room. Luckily, they had put silencers on. Sweat ran down both of them, their fluids spilling onto the bed as the redhead hammered his groin into the girl's vagina with great force. They both lost track of time, but the redhead knew his moment was about to end. Naruto, Haku, I'm going to finish soon. The girl didn't respond, she just kept moaning without stopping. The redhead kept thrusting and pushed his cock all the way in, piercing the girl's womb and filling her with his seed. Haku shrieked in ecstasy as she felt the thick fluid fill her inside. They stayed in the same position for 20 minutes until the boy's orgasm subsided as the thick fluid seeped out of the girl's vagina. After that, Naruto loosened his grip on his chains a little, carefully lowering the girl until he had her lying on the bed and freeing her from the chains. End of the lemon. I hope you liked it. After that intense session, Naruto was taking a bath, reflecting on his own progress and that of his companions. He had perfected his super strength and chakra chains. He kept these chains active at all times, tied to his waist to protect Kurama's seal. He had also perfected wood release, being able to use it like his ancestor, although he hadn't yet trained Sage Mode, but it seemed he was close. He also trained his wind release, being able to shape Amaterasu, although he preferred not to use it much because it consumed a lot of chakra, even though it was still a secondary technique. And he had made great progress with storm release thanks to Darui's training. He followed Kumo's tradition and adorned his body with tattoos representing the elements he had perfected, including the Suiton and Doton symbols on his shoulders and Mokuton on his back. He was close to perfecting his other elements. He also bore 2 seals on the palms of his hands, the Raijin no Ken in his right hand, his new sword, and the Fujin no Ken, the wind sword, which Azazel had crafted for him. Finally, he had advanced his Rinnegan, which now possessed 3 Tomo, and unlocked the human path, allowing him to steal the souls of his opponents. He also perfected his other 2 paths, enabling him to use Shinra Tensei every 10 seconds, as well as Baho Tenin and the Preta path. Besides, he now carried a hidden bottle of sake, ready to drink at any moment. It wasn't that he was a drunkard, he just liked to drink. That bottle contained hundreds of space-time seals filled with sake that would take a very long time to run out. As he descended the stairs and entered the living room, he saw Akino, who hadn't changed at all. She still had her long black hair tied in a ponytail and wore a white kimono. To Naruto's surprise, when Akino came to live in the Uzumaki clan mansion, he discovered she had perfect mastery of lightning release. No one could surpass her, not even the Reikage could defeat her in lightning release. She was assigned to the Information and Torture Association at her own request, and she certainly did a good job. Just as sadistic as Yuki was, so was Akino, and she was undoubtedly very dangerous, especially with a whip. Although her sadistic side stayed at work, at home she was the same sweet and cheerful girl. "Akino, good morning, Naruto-kun," the girl said, claiming her lips. At the same time, her companions came down to breakfast, so everyone sat down, but they also had other guests like Yujito, Darui, Karui, Samui, Omoi, and Killer Bee. In these years, Naruto's group improved a lot. Kimimaro improved his bone style, being able to use them better than before, in addition to being able to use the controlled cursed seal to increase his power, and he also had the lightning tattoo on his shoulder. Yugo had perfected his Kekkei Henkai as well as his wind and earth natures. Karen improved a lot, being able to fight like a good kunoichi by perfecting her chakra chains, although she couldn't use them like Tayuya and Naruto, but she used them very well, in addition to improving her medical ninjutsu and her water nature. Haku improved his ice ninjutsu, his jutsu were now colder and more resistant, and he could also create more forms. Yujito improved her control over her bijou, being able to use its power almost perfectly and extend her nails and summon a blue fire tail from her waist. Suigetsu perfected his ability to transform into water, as well as his kenjutsu, by using the Kubikurabocho technique. Fu could now sprout 3 wings from her chome to fly, and she also perfected her wind release technique. Gyuren could now create large quantities of crystals, as well as convert water-style jutsu into crystals. He usually created blue crystal swords that were attached to his arms, and his favorite technique was creating a crystal dragon that consumed almost no chakra. Tayuya improved her fire and wind techniques, and also the cursed seal, being able to use it without feeling pain due to the seal that Naruto placed on her and Kimimaro, which destroyed Orochimaru's influence and allowed them to use the seal at will and perfectly. In addition, she perfected her chakra chains. They all sat at the large table chatting while they had a peaceful breakfast. Several minutes later, the teams made by Darui as Jounin and Naruto, Kimimaro, Juice, Karen, Suigetsu, Gyuren, Tayuya, Fu, Haku and Yujito as Genins. And Killer Bee as Jounin and Samui, Karui and Omoi as Genins. They were now at the entrance of the village being seen off by the Reikage, Mabui and Akino. Thus began a mission for the redhead that would be more difficult than it seemed. Returning to Hell. In the Land of Fire, a large number of people walked, all of them from the village of Kumo, and it seemed they were all heading to Konoha, although one of them lagged behind, lost in thought. Naruto was experiencing a whirlwind of emotions, including fury, hatred, disappointment, but above all, sadness. These emotions made him want to run to the village and start a massacre that could only be matched by the massacre committed by his fox brother. While the others were lost in their own thoughts, Darui knew that when they submitted their registration forms for the Chunin exams, the village of Konoha would know that Naruto was among them, at least thanks to the agreement between the ninja villages that genin from other villages couldn't be harmed in the village hosting the Chunin exams. Unless Konoha wanted to start an open war. Kimimaro and Yugo felt bad about bringing the person they'd sworn loyalty to back to where his life had been a living hell, but they were going to protect him tooth and nail. The others shared the same thoughts and were going to protect Naruto no matter what. Both teams had already seen the large gates bearing the Konoha symbol. The only people at the entrance were the guards, who, to their surprise and embarrassment, appeared to be asleep. Darui, are they confident or are they suicidal? Killer Bee, yeah. You mustn't sleep because if you do, you'll die. He said it while rapping terribly. Gyuren, what kind of security is this? Tayuya, I can't quite sense several presences protecting the entrance a little further away. Juice, they're probably ambush. Kimimaro, they're not so stupid after all. They all approached the entrance until they were standing in front of the Chunin. Darui, excuse me. Izumo/Kotetsu, zzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. Darui and everyone else were sweating profusely. Darui, hey. Izumo/Kotetsu, zzzzzzzzzzzzzzz. Everyone started sweating again. Darui was about to try again, but Naruto beat him to it. The redhead approached and, using a bit of Kurama's chakra, let out a roar. Izumo/Kotetsu, ayaha. They screamed like little girls waking up and hugged each other in terror. Luckily, Naruto had put on his hood so they wouldn't discover him. Darui went ahead. Darui, excuse us, we are from Kumo and we came for the Chunin exams, he said, handing out everyone's forms, but making sure Naruto's was last. One of the Chunin hurried and stamped approved on all the forms without reading any of them. Izumo, hello, welcome to Konoha, he stammered, still terrified by the redhead's roar. They all entered Konoha and walked calmly, attracting the attention of civilians and ninjas, but it was nothing like they expected. Darui and B turned to their respective students. Darui, here, these are your slips that allow you to enter the exams, so don't lose them. Everyone took the leaves. Darui, you'll be fine. I asked Naruto. Naruto, no, but I will know how to control myself. Then Darui and B left the place, leaving the genin alone. Kimimaro, what do we do, Naruto-sama? Naruto, well, there are 4 hours left until the exam, although I want to pay a visit to someone. So they all left for the house of one of the most important people in the redhead's life. Hiruzen Sarutobi had just woken up. Even at 80 years old, he rose early, but it was for a personal reason. Since his adopted grandson left, he had made a habit of having breakfast at Ichiraku Ramen, the only place where Naruto could eat in peace. Tuchi and Ayam were among the few who cared for the redhead, and both were devastated to learn of Naruto's departure. Hiruzen walked to the entrance of his house to leave, but when he opened the door, he became wary upon seeing 13 teenagers, one of them hooded. Throughout his life, several people had attempted to assassinate him. Hiruzen, can you tell me who you are and what you're doing in my house? Still on guard. Naruto, it truly hurts me to the core that you don't recognize me. He heard that voice years ago, when he was younger and more innocent, and it made him lower his guard. The hooded ninja in the middle removed his hood. Naruto, it's been a while, hee. Hiruzen, unable to contain himself, gave Naruto a big hug, which was gladly returned. Hokage office. Minato entered his office to work and groaned at the sight of all the papers on the desk. With his head bowed like a prisoner, he sat down and began signing documents. The Chunin exams were a very busy time, especially with all the teams from other villages coming to participate, but he wasn't going to complain. After all, Konoha wasn't doing well, and they needed good publicity and more clients if they wanted to recover. That's why he registered the teams fresh out of the academy with the clan heirs. He hoped Menma, Nagato, Shio, and Mito would win the exams because otherwise, they would look bad, especially since they were the Hokage's children. In a small burst of smoke appeared a small green toad with a scroll on its back. Minato, thank you, he said, taking the scroll, and the toad disappeared. The older blonde man was nervous. Jiraiya had gone to the Land of Waves 2 months ago to gather information about Naruto and was worried about what would happen. He opened the scroll. Minato, I have new information that I can't reveal right now. Gather the council, I'll arrive in a few hours. Jiraiya. Minato sighed, this could be bad but also good, it all depended on what information Jiraiya obtained. On the streets of Konoha, Naruto walked along, still with his hood up, followed by Hiruzen on either side and the rest of his team behind. They attracted the attention of civilians and ninjas, some were about to ask Hiruzen something, but a glance from him caused everyone to look away. Hiruzen, Naruto, you don't know how sorry I am. I should have. Naruto, that's enough, hee. You did what you could, I don't hold a grudge. Hiruzen, even so, I could have done things better. Naruto, you should have focused on the damage to the village, don't blame yourself. The old man, and still a little more recovered. Hiruzen, well, I think we could continue our conversation over some nice ramen. Naruto opened his eyes when he saw that his favorite childhood spot was right in front of him. Upon entering, they saw that the place was empty except for a man dressed in white. Tuchi, you're late, Sandem-sama. You should normally be here by now. But when he turned around, he stopped talking, his normally closed eyes opened wide without him saying a word. I am, Tu-sama K. Estepasan. The girl also opened her eyes when she saw who was standing there. The girl jumped up and hugged the redhead. I am, Naru-chan. Tuchi was not far behind and joined the hug as well. After the hug, everyone sat down to eat ramen, and Naruto had a much larger bowl than usual, courtesy of Tuchi. However, the woman noticed Naruto's companions. Oh, sorry, we were very focused on Naruto. Hiruzen turned around and realized that Naruto was also coming with companions. I suppose they are Naruto's classmates. Hiruzen, I apologize, I was so focused on my grandson that I didn't even remember you were here. Kimimaro, that's fine, Sandim-sama. We understand you were in the middle of a family gathering. Hiruzen, well, let me introduce myself. I am Hiruzen Sarutobi, retired 3rd Hokage. Kimimaro, my name is Kimimaro Kagaya. Hiruzen's eyes widened in shock upon hearing his last name. Kimimaro, I think he's had some encounters with those from my clan. Hiruzen, yes, but I see that, without meaning to offend, you are calmer than those of your clan. Kimimaro, yes, even though I like to fight, I've learned to control myself. So everyone introduced themselves. Hiruzen, I'm actually surprised that most of you are from Kumo. Naruto, it's a long story. After that, everyone sat down and began to eat. Naruto then told them about his life. Hiruzen was surprised to learn how he had escaped. He had escaped using a summoning jutsu. The three of them were happy that the Tengu had adopted and trained him. Naruto didn't mention his encounter with Hagoromo, but he did describe the ordeal he had endured. Everyone felt saddened by what he had to do, but Hiruzen knew that a ninja would eventually have to take lives. The redhead explained his reasons for joining Kumo, and they understood the logic. Konoha, IWA, and Suna were obvious reasons, and he couldn't go to Kiri because it was in the middle of a civil war. Hiruzen felt bad knowing that Naruto had ended up at one of Orochimaru's bases, but at least he found solace in finding his friends. They felt proud of what he had done in the land of waves. Finally, he told them about his life in Kumo. However, time began to run out and the exams were about to begin, so Naruto and his team said goodbye to them and went to the academy to participate in the exams. Hiruzen was about to head home when an ANBU appeared. Ambu, Sandaime-sama, the council must meet. With a sigh, Hiruzen nodded and headed to the council chamber, although he also hoped to meet Naruto again. That sake he was carrying was to die for. Elsewhere, on a street in the village, several genin from Konoha could be seen, including the Hokage's children, Mikoto Uchiha's 4 daughters, and Sakura Haruno. In front of them were a beautiful redhead and a redhead with Suna headbands. Along with 2 others, one was dressed in a black jumpsuit from head to toe, with marks on his face, and was holding a child by the neck. Next to him was a pretty blonde with 4 pigtails and a large fan. Temari, Kankuro, leave him alone. Kankuro, Temari hit me and I'll teach her a lesson. Ari, Gaara's twin sister, that's enough. Kankuro. Gary, Gaara's twin brother, that's enough. Menma, let it go. Kankuro was going to hit the boy, but a stone that hit his hand made him let go. Sasuke, look what the ninjas from Suna are doing in Konoha. Sakura, Sasuke-kun. The 4 Uchiha women smiled when they saw their brother. Kankuro was about to attack Sasuke, but a voice made everyone pay attention to the top of the tree where Sasuke was. They heard an icy voice that caught everyone's attention and saw a redhead similar to the 2 genin from Suna, but this one was much more hostile and, like the 2 redheads, he had a gourd tied to his back. Kankuro, Gaara. Temari said, terrified, copying his terrified expression. Gaara, silence, Kankuro. You're tarnishing our village's reputation with your shameful attitude. Kankuro, but, Gaara, shut up or I'll kill you, he said, expelling a very strong murderous instinct, scaring most of those present except for the 2 redheads who looked sadly at their brother. But another voice caught everyone's attention and they saw a green-haired girl standing on a tree branch next to where Gaara was, an orange-haired boy lying on the trunk, and a white-haired boy with a large sword who was amusedly watching the scene. Fu, oh ninjas of Suna, it seems this exam will be very interesting. Nice to meet you, my name is Fu, Jinchuriki of the Nanabai. Everyone from Konoha and Suna listened intently to what she said, and almost everyone's jaws dropped to the ground upon hearing that she was the Jinchuriki of the Nanabai. The red-haired girl and boy from Suna were particularly excited to see her, as they hadn't seen any other Jinchuriki besides themselves and their brother Gaara, who appeared next to his siblings in a sand sun shin, looking at Fu. She was a Jinchuriki, she would understand the pain of being one, even though her attitude confused him because she behaved very differently from him. Yugo, Fu, don't you think we should go to the academy already? Suigetsu, oh please, I don't think anything bad will happen. But he regretted it when Tayuya and Karui appeared with unfriendly expressions, and Kimimaro, Samui, Omoi, Guren, Karen, Haku, and Yujito arrived with them. Menma and Mito, upon seeing Kumo ninjas, became enraged because several years ago, ninjas from that village had tried to kidnap their mother, so they attempted to attack them but were stopped by Sayuri, Kasumi, Hitomi, and Satsuki. Menma, Kumo ninjas, I'll kick your butts, so get ready. Kimimaro, this is very interesting, don't you think, Naruto-sama? Time seemed to stop for everyone when they heard that, but they all looked up a little higher on a branch. Standing upside down was Naruto, looking at them with an icy stare and holding the Raijin no Ken. Nobody could say anything until someone spoke up. Kasumi, na Naruto, he said with a tear in his right eye. Naruto, let's go. The Kumo people nodded and all disappeared in a cloud of smoke, leaving only Naruto, who made a hand seal with one hand, preparing to go to the academy. Shio, wait, but Naruto had already left. The Uchiha women immediately went to the academy with tears in their eyes. After that, Gaara and Kankuro left the area. But Nagato said something to the others from Suna. Nagato, what are your names? The redhead spoke. Nice to meet you, my name is Sabaka no Ari. And these are my siblings Gary and Temari. Sakura, what are they doing in Konoha? Temari, seriously, you don't know? We're here for the Chunin exam being held today. Ari, by the way, please excuse our brother Gaara's attitude, he's always like that for a personal reason. Anyway, we have to go take the exam. Then the rest of Suna left, although the redhead with the pumpkin couldn't stop thinking that Naruto was someone very interesting and sexy. After that, the Namikaze brothers went to the academy to take the exam, though they were mostly there to see their older brother, whom they had never met. And so, they all went to the exam. Ninja Academy. The Kumo teams arrived at the Ninja Academy where they walked through the halls but saw two genin blocking the way of several others, but they knew that those genin created a genjutsu, so they passed by and continued walking to the room where the exam was to be held. But as they passed through the corridor they felt a small murderous instinct which was ignored by most, although Yugo and Kimimaro suddenly turned around and saw in the distance a genin from Konoha of the Hyuga clan. Naruto, Yugo, Kimimaro, leave him alone, he's not worth it. They both reluctantly agreed. No one would lay a finger on their lord, and they would accept it. The Hyuga was furious, but he decided to postpone it and have his revenge. The Kumo group arrived at the room where the exam would take place, although upon entering all eyes were on them and several genin from villages such as Kiri, Kusa, Aim, Otto, etc. launched a killing instinct at them that did not faze anyone, although Kimimaro and Yugo returned it with more intensity, which terrified everyone, so the Kumo group leaned against the wall waiting for the examiner. All eyes were on them. Some women looked at the redhead with lust and slight blushes as Naruto took his small gourd and drank. But suddenly someone very loud arrived. A blonde man with spiky hair came running in. Menma, wow, there are a lot of them. But the pink-haired girl came in and punched him, knocking him to the floor. Sakura, idiot, we agreed not to draw attention to ourselves. Sasuke entered, sighing at his teammates' nonsense. He was followed by several other genin. Shio, damn it, Menma, can't you be quiet for just one moment? Shikamaru, don't even try to change your brother, it's pointless and troublesome. Then all the genin in that group began a loud conversation. Karen, is who I think she is. Suigetsu, he's an idiot. Tayuya, she's more of an idiot than Suigetsu. Suigetsu, hey, Tayuya, I'm just telling the truth. Kimimaro, maybe he fell on the ground as a child. Samui, most likely. Kurama, thank God my soul didn't end up with one of those four idiots. Naruto, how long will it take them to realize where I am, even though the Uchiha have already figured it out? He said, referring to the four Uchiha women who had already noticed his presence. You'd better shut up. The one who said that was a bespectacled boy named Kabuto, who began to tell them that he could give them information about the ninjas participating in the exams. Sasuke, that means you know his mission record and his abilities. Kabuto, sure. Just ask whose information you want me to give. Sasuke, Rock Lee from Konoha, Sabaka no Gaara from Suna, and the Kumo team. Naruto knew what was coming, but he paid attention to what Kabuto said. Apparently, Rock Lee was a close-quarters fighter, and Gaara possessed great defense. Sayuri, what about the Kumo team? Kabuto, I can't say much about the Kumo team since they only registered today, but their missions have been 80 D rank, 30 C rank, 20 B rank, 15 A rank, and 7 S rank, he said, nervously scratching the back of his neck. The whole room fell silent. Those near Kumo's team moved away. Sakura, it's a joke. Kabuto, no. I've seen and confirmed the information several times before coming here. Besides, there's a very particular genin on that team. Menma, I don't care if that idiot has been on S-rank missions. Listen up, idiots, I'm Menma Namikaze and I won't let anyone beat me, especially you unknown ninja from Kumo. I'm going to crush you. All the genin looked at him with a frown and launched a killing instinct at him, which was surpassed by one that everyone could see, and it was Naruto, whom Menma recognized as his older brother, but he was terrified by that red eye with the slit pupil. Naruto, in Kurama's voice, said, Naruto, I accept the challenge. First test. In the council chamber, all the council members were gathered, listening to Jiraiya, who had just returned from the village hidden in the waves. He was recounting his journey and what little he had learned about Naruto's abilities, which included defeating Zabuza single-handedly. He also mentioned the names of his companions. It's worth noting that everyone was surprised when he revealed that Kimimaro was Kaguya and that Naruto had sworn loyalty to her, as well as when he mentioned that Fu was a Jinchuriki and that Taiyuya and Karen were Uzumakis. Minato, fine, but it's no use if we don't know where they are. Jiraiya was about to speak but the words wouldn't come out, but someone else spoke. Hiruzen, Naruto joined Kumo. Nobody said anything, they were too surprised by the person who said it. Jiraiya, if that's true, wait, how did you know? Minato, since when have you known that? Hiruzen, since this morning. To be honest, it was kind of hard to see the band and I almost didn't recognize it. Mikoto, Hiruzen Naruto is here, she said hopefully, just like Kushina. Hiruzen, yes, I had breakfast with him this morning and he told me he was taking the exams. Minato was even more surprised that his son was in the exams, but the civilians started with their nonsense. Civil, it must be brought before the council. Civil, someone call the ambulances. Minato, we won't do anything. Everyone looked at him as if he were crazy. Shikaku, he's right, the rules of the Chunin exams make him untouchable unless we want a war. The white-haired woman stood up with anger in her eyes. Kushina, are you suggesting I do nothing when my son has been kidnapped by those bastards? Hiruzen, for your information, Naruto joined Kumo of his own free will. Everyone stared at him in disbelief. Hiruzen, I don't know why you're surprised. Obviously, I wasn't going back. Anyone who thought that was an idiot. He wasn't going to Suna and IWA for obvious reasons, and he couldn't go to Kiri because they were in the middle of a war. So that left Kumo. Besides, the fact that they treated their Jinchuriki better made him decide. Hut, what do we do then? Minato, nothing. Academy. Menma was sweating buckets, completely exhausted. He woke up ready to take on the world and crush the Chunin exams, not even your mom believes that. He met up with his classmates at the entrance and they decided to walk towards it, but they ran into a guy named Rock Lee who challenged Sasuke to a fight. The funny thing was, Lee beat the Uchiha sensei. Menma would have loved to keep watching, but Lee's sensei stopped the fight, so they headed to the entrance with their classmates. He wanted to make a confident entrance and stormed and shouting at the top of his lungs, but he was punched by the girl he liked. Later, they met Kabuto, who helped them a little by giving them some information, but when he learned that the biggest threat was a team from Kumo, he flew into a rage. He knew that Kumo had tried to kidnap his mother and his friend Hinata a long time ago. He wanted to make it clear that he would defeat them, but things started going from bad to worse. The murderous instinct he felt almost made him soil his pants, and he saw his older brother unleash an even stronger murderous instinct that sent him sprawling to his knees. Then the examiners arrived and wrote the rules on the board, and now the younger blonde boy stared in horror at the questions, the memories of his horrid first encounter with his older brother still fresh. Menma glanced behind him and saw the ninja from Kumo with 2 dots on his forehead trying to poke a hole in his head with his finger. He saw Shio a few rows away, looking at him with his fist raised, which meant he was about to beat him up. Menma wasn't the only one whose head was a mess. Shio, who answered the questions as best he could, kept remembering the terrible first encounter with Naruto. Shio, Menma is such an idiot for not being able to keep his mouth shut. Now everyone's going to come after us, and to top it all off, Narumi hates us. Other genin had their thoughts about the redhead. Shikamaru, troublesome. Choji, that's Menma and Nagato's brother. They don't look alike at all. Ino, oh my god, Shio and Mito's brother is so hot. Ino, you're mean, you already have Sai. But he's so, new. The blonde was having trouble making a decision. Kiba, damn, the presence of that guy screams alpha at the top of his lungs. Shino, my insects are uncomfortable with your presence, it's best to keep your distance. Yakumo, he is Shio's brother. Kurama girl knew that Shio's biggest dream was to bring her brother back and she was worried about her. Myth, why would Naruni be in Kumo's garbage? Nagato, Menma, you idiot. Sasuke, I'm eager to fight you. Kasumi, Naruto-kun. Hitomi, I hope you will forgive us. Satsuki, what will he think of us? Sayuri, I hope you come back. While the other genin from other villages were frightened of the redhead, a few others felt a great interest in him. Among them were a brunette from Kiri. The Suna genin had similar thoughts about the redhead. Ari had perverted ideas about the Uzumaki that made her drool and her nose bleed. Gary also wanted to talk to him and Fu, after all, they were like brothers, being Jinchuriki, and Gaara was excited to fight him and prove his existence. Naruto, meanwhile, sat calmly with his completed exam sheet. Obtaining the information had been easy, as he had secretly created a wooden clone that spied on the genin and obtained the answers. This clone had also written on the wooden tables of his classmates, so all of them had nearly completed their sheets, with the exception of the 10th question, which no one could answer. As time passed, he chatted with Kurama about anything and everything, and both of them tried to suppress their laughter as they watched Menma struggle to complete the exam but fail to answer anything, and as he eliminated genin one after another. 40 minutes later. Ibiki, very good, worms. Put down your pencils, here begins the 10th question. But I must also tell you that you have the option to continue or quit. Temari, it's like we can choose. What will happen if we resign? Ibiki, if they resign, it will be their requests as well as those of their colleagues. Menma, as if someone would choose to quit. Ibiki, I'm not finished yet. If you choose to continue, you can answer the 10th question, but if you fail, you won't be allowed to retake the exams, you'll be genin for life. Gary, that rule is stupid. We've had people here who have taken the exam multiple times. Ibiki, too bad I'm the one taking the exam this time. Many felt nervous about it until several voices were heard. Genin, I'm leaving. Ibiki, number 31 is suspended, 123 and 69 as well. Genin, me too. Genin, sorry guys, I'm leaving. That's how many began to withdraw. Ibiki, numbers 45, 3, 23, 7, 10, 114, 89, 87, 62, 1, 23. And so he continued eliminating genin. Shio was panicking as she watched the genin being expelled, and doubt completely overwhelmed her. Turning her gaze, she saw her siblings, who were in the same state as almost everyone else who remained. But looking at Naruto, she was surprised to see that he was very calm, like everyone else from Kumo. But his attention shifted to Menma, and he watched in horror as she slowly raised her hand, leaving Naruto to his own thoughts. Naruto, so this is as far as you can go. What a disappointment. But suddenly Menma slammed her hand on the table, drawing everyone's attention. Menma, don't you dare underestimate me. I'm going to try, and I don't give a damn if I spend my whole life as a genin because I'm going to become Hokage one way or another. Sasuke, he has courage, you have to admit it. Sakura, baka. I thought with a smile. Nagato, that's definitely Menma. Menma's words had motivated the rest of the genin, but there were a few who weren't, and among them was Naruto, who was having a telepathic conversation with Kurama. Kurama, ha ha ha, Hokage, that clown. Ha 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 ha. I knew he was an idiot, but I never thought he'd be this bad. The chances of him becoming that are less than the chances of me forgiving that son of a bitch Madara. He said, laughing uncontrollably as he writhed on the floor, laughing like a madman. Naruto, Hokage. He says it like an idiot, without understanding its meaning or the responsibilities it entails. Ibiki looked at the Chunin in charge and spoke. Ibiki, well, all I can say is that they passed the test. He said with a smile. Sakura, wait a minute, we've passed all at once, and the 10th question. Ibiki, the question never existed, it was about the decision they just made. Nagato, like. Kiba, what about the 9 questions? Did they serve no purpose? Ibiki, of course they were useful, they're there to test your ability to obtain information. In short, this exam was designed to be cheated on. Most of the genin were surprised by that, while others remained neutral. However, one did raise his voice again. Menma, hahaha, it was clearer than water. Naruto/Kurama, yes, of course. Ibiki's demonstration was the same as the original story. Naruto sensed a familiar chakra approaching at great speed. Through the window, a person covered by a sheet unfurled it with kunai, revealing a sign that read, Part 2. But the most important thing was that a beautiful woman appeared, wearing a tan trench coat, an orange miniskirt, mesh armor, a purple hairstyle similar to Guren's, brown eyes, and D-cup breasts. It was someone the redhead remembered very well. Enko, I am in charge of the second test, Enko Mitarashi. Everyone was stunned until most of the men's noses started bleeding and several women glared at the purple-haired girl with fury and envy. She hadn't seemed to notice them. Ibiki, I'm still here, she said, pulling back the sheets. Enko blushed, seeing how her boss had ruined her amazing entrance. But she started looking at the participants. Enko, you've let quite a few of them get ahead. It doesn't matter, I'll make sure more than half of them don't make it through the next test. Hours later, the genin teams had arrived at a creepy forest. The roars of wild animals echoed from within, and the forest's terrifying appearance filled the genin with dread. Enko, this is where the second test will take place, the forest of death. The Kumo people had their thoughts. A forest with Naruto, this test is already won. Thanks to Naruto's wood release, it was going to be very easy to win. Menma, what a stupid thing to say, it doesn't scare me. He spoke like an idiot while he was messing with the supervisor. Naruto wondered if Menma had truly been trained by his parents, seeing how stupid Menma was doing, especially since Enko had cut his cheek but he hadn't paid it any mind. Then Enko explained the rules of the exam, just like in the original series, and began handing out the scrolls. But when it was Naruto's team's turn, Enko realized who he was and didn't stop for a few minutes asking questions about his life. But Naruto told her he would tell her after the test, and they said goodbye, not before they could hug. After that, Naruto looked at the other teams, seeing how strong they seemed, and realized that the only interesting teams were Suna's, the one with the girl he saw taking Enko's kunai, the Hyuga team, Otto's team, and Kiri's team of brown-haired kids. And so the second test began. The Sannin of the Serpents. In the Forest of Death, the two Kumo teams walked calmly through the woods, alert and ready. The redhead was now coming to terms with the situation. But one thing was clear, he was furious with Minato, Kushina, and Jiraiya. He was furious that, because of them, his early life had been a living hell, and furious that they had abandoned him just to train their siblings. The redhead wasn't stupid, he knew that the three of them could have made a better decision than simply abandoning him. Even though, if they hadn't abandoned him, Kurama might have plotted to kill him in a parallel dimension, things had turned out this way, and that couldn't be changed. Another thing that enraged him was how Kushina broke the Uzumaki clan's rules. From his own experience, he considered family the most important thing. Not only because of blood ties, he considered Karen and Taiyuya his younger sisters, and not only them, but his entire group his family. That's why he preferred to jump headfirst into hell rather than turn his back on them. Therefore, when he thought of Kushina, a former Uzumaki who abandoned a member of her family to their fate, he could only feel, besides fury, disgust and contempt. Although his rational, shinobi side thought that Minato, as Hokage, had a justification, unfortunately, the elder Namikaze abandoned Konoha at its most crucial moment. Finally, there were his siblings Menma, Shio, Mito, and Nagato. He knew that by following in their parents' footsteps, they had ceased to be Uzumaki and no longer had any connection to the clan. Although they were the reason for his abandonment, he couldn't blame them. After all, they were just newborns when they became Jinchuriki, and it was Minato, Kushina, and Jiraiya who made the decision to leave him. A small part of him wanted to get to know them before drawing conclusions, but seeing Menma and Mito's attitudes, he preferred to meet Shio and Nagato, who at least seemed more mature. After walking for a while, everyone sat down. Karui, so how do we do this? Kimimaro, the best thing to do is find the scrolls and go to the tower as quickly as possible. Juice, I don't think it's a very good idea. Fu, why do you say that? Yugo, the village has probably already found out that Naruto-sama is here, so some idiot is bound to try to attack us. Everyone nodded and were about to continue, but someone spoke up. Naruto, I sensed the presence of some teams nearby. They all nodded and jumped into a tree that was dark enough that no one could see them. Then they saw 4 Konoha teams who seemed to have formed an alliance and were deciding who would be the leader, though they were also having another conversation. And apparently, they didn't notice the Kumo team's presence. Genin, it's decided, we'll go after the rookies first, it'll be easy. Genin, are you sure? Not counting the pink-haired girl, the gray-haired guy, and the pale guy, there's no one who stands out, and most of them are heirs to some clan. Genin, I don't think it's a good idea. He said something nervous. Genin, are you afraid? The Genin from before looked at him annoyed. Genin, of course not, only that their parents can be a pain in the ass. Genin, what if we go after the demon and his companions? Everyone looked at him as if he were crazy. Genin, didn't you hear what that kid Kabuto said? The demon is Hokage-sama's eldest son. Going after him would be suicide. Genin, fuck it, he may be called Naruto Uzumaki but he's still a fucking demon. Genin, I agree, if we kill the demon they will praise us as heroes for killing it. Everyone from Kumo was furious, but they turned their gaze towards Taiyuya and Kimimaro, who were no longer in the tree. Everyone, shit. The albino and the redhead landed calmly a few meters from the Konoha Genin, who jumped up, alert and ready to fight. But one of them realized who they were. Genin, those two are companions of the demon. Kimimaro and Taiyuya clenched their fists in fury, their expressions blazing with rage. The group's leader stepped forward. Genin, well, they are the demon's idiots. How about you tell us where the demon is and we'll give you a quick death. He spoke confidently, as did his companions. But their confidence vanished when they felt a murderous instinct that caused all the Genin to gasp for breath. And they saw the eyes of the Uzumaki and Kagaya, their faces were bloodthirsty and filled with unbridled fury. Kimimaro, your sins of insulting my master will be paid for in blood. Taiyuya, I'm going to kill them in the most painful way I know. Then, several black marks appeared on both of them, signifying that they would use the cursed seal. Although they could have easily killed them even without the cursed seal, the fury they felt at how the Genin had referred to Naruto forced them to use it. For both of them, the Uzumaki was one of the most important people in their lives. Kimimaro did it because thanks to Naruto, he had been given a second chance at life, and Taiyuya did it because, along with Karen, Naruto was the only Uzumaki still alive. She also considered him her older brother, and if anyone insulted him, she would personally kill them in the most painful way possible. The Konoha Genin, already frightened, were now shocked to see the albino and the redhead vanish. They all looked around, searching for them, but a noise startled them. They saw one of their comrades dead, his head decapitated and rolling on the ground. Another noise alerted them, and they saw another of their comrades dead, their arms and hearts ripped out. The remaining Genin realized they were being killed, and terrified, they all started running in an attempt to escape, but the 2 Kumo ninja wouldn't allow it. Kimimaro, who was mid-jump, summoned 6 bones and launched them, aiming for the head. They struck, killing 4, and the other 2 bones embedded themselves in another's leg, causing him to fall to the ground, unable to move. Meanwhile, the other 5 Konoha Genin continued running, trying to escape, but they weren't so lucky. Suddenly, golden chains emerged from the ground and grabbed one of their feet. They tried to remove the chains, but more chains appeared from the ground and began to coil around the Genin's bodies until all 5 were suspended in mid-air, Taiyuya's chains binding their legs, hands, arms, and chests. The 5 Genin thrashed desperately, trying to break free, but it was no use, as the chains were capable of restraining a bijou. Taiyuya, who stood in front of the cowardly Genin, glared at them with anger and contempt, and the chains on her back moved aggressively. Taiyuya, absolutely no one speaks to my brother like that, or I'll kill them just like I'll kill you. She said, then made hand seals to say, Taiyuya, Reiten electrical chains. Thus a great amount of electricity covered the chains and the Genin watched in horror as the chains filled with electricity. Genins. It was the last thing they did, as they were electrocuted to death. Taiyuya, seeing that no one survived, returned her chains and, along with Kimimaro, began to walk menacingly toward the sole survivor, who was crawling on the ground with 2 bones piercing his legs as he did everything he could to get away. "Kimimaro, where are you going?" The genin turned his head, seeing the 2 Kumo ninjas. Kimimaro wore a macabre smile that would have filled Alucard with pride. Meanwhile, Tayuya still had 6 chains on her back that moved aggressively. The genin screamed in fear, tears welling in his eyes. "Genin, back away. Tayuya, or what will you do?" The frightened genin continued crawling, but a foot on his back wouldn't allow it. Kimimaro moved him with his foot, and the genin was left looking into the eyes of both of them. "Genin, piety. Kimimaro, your miserable existence was doomed when you insulted my lord." Then, pulling out another bone, Tayuya prepared her chains, and they both attacked. Kimimaro's bone pierced the genin's skull as if it were butter, and Tayuya's chains tore through his lungs and heart. In the tree branches, everyone from Kumo watched the scene, and Naruto sipped his sake. This situation had happened so many times that he was used to it. "Naruto, great, one of our advantages has been discovered," he said, looking at a bush where Team 10 of Konoha was trembling with fear, praying to any god they knew that they wouldn't be discovered. Just a few minutes ago, they were supposed to take the scrolls from the Konoha genin. After all, this exam was based on the rule of the strongest. But when the albino and the redhead arrived, everything went to hell, and they had to watch as the genin teams were repeatedly killed. After that, they saw those strange marks on both of their bodies disappear, and they both began inspecting the corpses, searching for the scrolls. Shikamaru was devising more than 100 escape plans. They couldn't, it was impossible. If Kimimaro and Tayuya were monsters in terms of strength, how strong was Naruto? But he glanced away and saw that Naruto's single eye was fixed on him. He'd seen them. They were screwed. They looked at each other, one with fear, the other with neutrality. They continued like that until the albino and the redhead climbed the tree with the 4 scrolls. Everyone from Kumo noticed Team 10, but they all ignored them and headed toward the tower. The tension was palpable, and Ino began sobbing uncontrollably, trying to stifle her desperate cries. Choji vomited to one side, terrified. Shikamaru collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. "Shikamaru, why did he let us live? He could have killed us and gotten another role." With those from Kumo, Naruto was thinking about the boy he'd seen in the bushes and wondering what the hell he was doing in this exam. It was more than clear that this boy had never killed anyone in his life, so why was he even participating? The only reason they hadn't killed him was because they already had the necessary scrolls for both teams, and they even had 2 extra. He was also curious about how his siblings were doing, and using his connection to the forest, he sensed their presence. But then he opened his eyes and stopped abruptly, surprising his teammates, who also stopped. "Yugo, what's happening, Naruto-sama?" "Naruto, I need to ask you a favor." Elsewhere, Shio was terrified, there was no other way to put it. She knew this exam was dangerous, but she didn't believe she was in real danger. Since arriving in the village, she had trained incredibly hard to become a true kunoichi. Because she and her twin brothers possessed very limited ninjutsu, and even more so because she and her brothers had lost the Nine Tails chakra as well as their Uzumaki blood, she dedicated herself to training in kenjutsu, taijutsu, and chakra control. At that moment, she and Nagato were considerably stronger than Menma and Mito, since those two were complete idiots. For obvious reasons, she and Nagato were far superior, and it could be said that they were both at the level of a Chunin. But nothing had prepared her for this madness. Before the second test began, she and Nagato's team, Menma's team, and the younger Uchiha girls agreed to team up to make the exam easier. They met in a part of the forest, but that kunoichi from Kusa appeared and unleashed her killer instinct. Her murderous intent made them see their own deaths, and none of them could resist it, but they still managed to break free and had to fight. At first, they realized that the Kusa ninja's companions were actually snakes, so they had to face them first. Menma and Mito were swallowed by the 2 of them because they thought it would be easy, but the Uchiha saved them by burning the snakes with fireballs, leaving only the Kusa ninja. But things went from bad to worse. First, the Kusa ninja attacked them with consecutive wind blasts and taijutsu, inflicting serious wounds. They then began to attack, but it was useless. The ninja then summoned a gigantic snake that easily defeated Menma, who was now unconscious on the ground. Sai and Nagato suffered the same fate, though they weren't in such bad shape, but they were still unconscious. Sasuke was the only one who managed to fight back, being the strongest in the group, but he was also defeated. The Uchiha and Mito tried to attack her with various jutsu, but they had no luck. The ninja then pulled several snakes from her sleeves and mouth, which approached at full speed, trying to grab and bite them. At first, they managed to dodge some of the snakes, but Mito and Hitomi were bitten on the leg and fell unconscious. Kasumi, Satsuki, and Sayuri were caught and now lay on the ground, bound hand and foot by the ninja's snakes. Zoro was unconscious from the venom of the snake that had bitten him, but he wasn't in mortal danger, just like Mito and Hitomi. Finally, Yakumo and Shio were in very bad shape. Yakumo lay with his sword lying far away, unable to get up, but still conscious. Shio was badly beaten and could barely stand, her sword lying far away, staring fearfully at the enemy Kunoichi, or rather, the enemy. Shortly after leaving her and Yakumo in a bad state, and with no one left to fight, including Sakura, who was uselessly on her knees with tears in her eyes, Sasuke, who had just received a bite on the neck from the Kunoichi, was lying unconscious on the ground in agony. After that, the ninja from Kusa removed the mask from her face, revealing her true identity: long black hair, slit eyes, and pale skin. Shio didn't recognize him at first, but he introduced himself. Orochimaru, the White Snake. Now Shio, along with Yakumo and the still-bound Uchiha, realized the difference in power. They were Chunin hopefuls, and he was a Sannin. Their chances of victory were non-existent. Orochimaru, you disappoint me, Shio-chan. I expected more from the daughter of that damned yondaime, he said arrogantly. Shio, fuck you, you damn pedophile. The Sannin's face widened. Orochimaru, it seems that, like your father, you don't understand your place in the world. Then he gave Shio a sadistic look, which made her shudder. Orochimaru, I need your brother Menma for Sasuke to advance to the next phase, but you and your brothers are completely dispensable, he said, approaching menacingly with a sword in his hand. Shio tried to move but couldn't. Yakumo tried to reach for his katana but couldn't, it was too far away. The Uchiha, bound by the snakes, tried to free themselves, but it was useless, they were being squeezed too tightly and no longer had the strength to break free. The world slowed down for Shio, and she began to remember her loved ones, her godparents, her friends, her family, her lost brother, her Naruni. Shio, Oni-chan, she murmured with a tear in her eye. Crack. But at the same time as he witnessed his death, he also saw him escape. He saw a ninja appear in a flash and punched the Sannin in the cheek, sending him flying into a tree. The sound of breaking bones was clearly audible as he crashed into it. His head was deformed, and his arms were at an odd angle. Most of the damage was caused by the impact with the tree. What they could see in Orochimaru's eyes was pain, disbelief, and fear. The girls looked at their savior, and although he had his back turned, his red hair was unmistakable, and they saw 12 other figures appear. Naruto, I never expected to find you in these circumstances, Orochimaru. The Sannin opened his mouth with difficulty, and to the horror of Team B and the Konoha ninjas, 2 hands emerged and a new Orochimaru emerged unharmed. Orochimaru, I was eager to meet you, Naruto-kun. Naruto, I'm sorry I can't say the same to you after what you put my teammates through. Orochimaru, I'm impressed that you were interested in recruiting him despite the problems some of them have, like Yugo or Kimimaro. How did you solve their problems? The former jailers glared at the Sannin but restrained themselves. Naruto, it's none of your business. Orochimaru, it doesn't matter, you still think you can beat me, Orochimaru, the strongest of the 3 Sannin. Naruto, yes. Orochimaru opened his eyes, as did the Uchiha, Yakumo, and Shio. Orochimaru, don't be arrogant, little boy. Naruto, it's not arrogance, it's the truth. First, since you're here, you can't use more than half your power because otherwise you'd alert the village and they'd know you're here. Second, there are 13 of us, and unlike those idiots from Konoha, we actually get proper training. Besides, if you push me, you might make me angry. he said as his right eye turned red, its pupil slitting, and the marks on his cheeks grew darker. Orochimaru frowned. The damned redhead was right. The problem was that he didn't know the redhead's abilities, since he was an enigma. Orochimaru, I'm going to have to find a way to escape. He drew his most powerful weapon, the Kusanagi, and charged forward. Naruto drew his two swords and blocked the Sannin's thrust with the Raijin no Ken. Orochimaru's eyes widened as he recognized the sword, but he stepped back, avoiding a cut. Orochimaru couldn't stop thinking about how Naruto had obtained those swords, but he didn't have time to think before Karen and Taiyuya's chains restrained him, preventing any movement. However, the Sannin was struck by a punch from Jo that transformed his arm, making the blow even more brutal. The Sannin was thrown into a tree again, but he didn't have time to recover before he was hit by a gust of wind from Fu and a water dragon from Suigetsu. They completely destroyed the tree and sent him flying once more. Orochimaru opened his mouth and used his skin-shedding ability again, avoiding Kimimara's bones. The Sannin rushed toward the Uzumaki and tried to strike him, but he vanished in a puff of smoke. The Uzumaki emerged from the ground, connecting with a hook that lifted the snake summoner off the ground, who was then hit by a fireball from Samui. He had to use his skin-shedding ability again due to the burns caused by the blonde's attack and received a horizontal slash from Omoi that caused a deep wound. With difficulty, he backed away and changed bodies once more, beginning to worry. He knew this was going to be difficult, but things were getting really bad for him. The numerical advantage meant he had to use his skin shed several times. To escape, he created a cloud of smoke and an earth clone to go after Naruto. Naruto's chains appeared and pierced the Sannin, but he exploded into mud. The Uzumaki sensed the Sannin's presence moving away. Normally, he would have pursued the Sannin, but he had more important things to do, so he retracted his chains and signaled his companions to stop, causing them all to lower their guard. The girls of Konoha watched the battle in shock. Sakura realized for the first time her own futility and wondered what she was doing there. The other girls felt the same way. After everything calmed down, Naruto turned around, as did his group, looking at the four defeated teams. Only Sakura, Sayuri, Satsuki, Kasumi, Yakumo, and Shio remained conscious, though the Uchiha clan had already been freed from the snakes since the Sannin had left. Naruto stared at his little sister, who was shrinking in his presence. Silence reigned until the redhead sighed. Naruto, you know, I didn't expect our first meeting to be like this. Shio, yes, it's kind of weird, although I didn't know how to make a meeting between the two, he said with a smile. They were both going to continue talking, but Yakumo spoke up. Yakumo, no offense, but you can postpone this. It's not the best time for this. Samui, I agree, blood will bring the predators. Both brothers blushed, but the Kumo clan members started walking. Naruto picked Shio up bridal style. The girl blushed but didn't protest. Yugo picked up Yakumo Yasai. Kimimaro lifted Menma like a sack of potatoes. Samui picked up Hitomi. The Uchiha clan members stood up and followed them, keeping a close eye on the redhead, but they couldn't say anything. Sakura stood up and picked up Sasuke. Karui lifted Nagato, and Omoi lifted Mito, so they all walked to a safe place where they could spend the night.